Over the last 100 years, we have done something truly incredible to this planet. We've made it much, much smaller. What did most to shrink the world in the 20th century? The aeroplane?
So we're off.
Was it the car?
I've just forgotten what everything does. Hold on.
Or was it television?
You, James.
Is that your final answer? Well, let's see. Let's say it's 1900 and I want to speak to a very good friend of mine in New York. Well, I can't pick the telephone up because there isn't one yet.
Thank you very much.
In fact, the only way of getting a message to him quickly is by Morse code. But what if I actually want to speak to him? I now have no choice but actually to go to New York. And that was going to be tricky because obviously there were no aeroplanes flying the Atlantic yet. Probably I'd just give up at that. In fact, millions of people did. The world was just far, far too big, so they stayed at home. But that wasn't going to last. Because in 1919, these two places suddenly became a lot closer together when a couple of British blokes got their hands on one of these. A Vickers Vimy, an out-of-work World War I bomber. It was not much more than a piece of old military surplus, but this is how long-haul travel began. On a cold evening in Newfoundland in June 1919, two British chaps, and they really were British chaps, John Alcock, Arthur Whitten Brown, set out to attempt something that had so far never been achieved, a non-stop crossing of the Atlantic Ocean in an aeroplane. More specifically, in that aeroplane. Look at it. This is a replica Vimy, but a faithful one. And the prospect of flying anywhere in it is pretty terrifying. For a start, you have to sit outside, and Alcock and Brown faced 2,000 miles of freezing ocean. But they were prepared for anything. They had a couple of ham sandwiches and a flask of OXO broth. It is said that fortune favours the brave, and as it happens, Alcock and Brown realised that they could make a bob or two out of this great adventure, because the Daily Mail newspaper had put up a prize equal to about £1.5 million in today's money for the first people to make the crossing successfully. And by the time Alcock here and Brown were fuelling up their aeroplane, the competition had already been running for 6 years, and quite a few people had already fallen into the drink. But they didn't let that put them off, because they were men, and they were British. And to be honest, they were a bit hard up. After struggling for nearly 16 hours to remain in the air, Alcock and Brown landed in Ireland on the 15th of June 1919. It wasn't exactly a textbook landing, but any landing you walk away from is a good one. Transatlantic flight in an aeroplane was now a reality. But many thought the aeroplane was not the best way to fly. It faced competition from a monster which had been commanding the skies since the start of the century. A monster that lived here, the airship. In the 20s and 30s, Cardington in Bedfordshire was home to Britain's airship industry. But to be honest, our best efforts had always lagged behind Germany's Zeppelins. And the greatest Zeppelin of them all was the Hindenburg. As late as 1937, it was regularly taking passengers between Germany and New York. Indeed, Zeppelins might still be shrinking the world today had it not been for one fatal flaw, the hydrogen that held them up. There is my balloon full of hydrogen. This is a crossbow, and that is a fiery bolt, or it will be in a second. Hang on. Ready? Fire! Obviously, the Germans weren't completely stupid, and they knew that this stuff was hazardous, and so they took some precautions. They provided a smoking room, but They did line it with asbestos. There was also only one lighter allowed on board. It was this one, and it was chained to the smoking room table. Also, they used garlic to odorise the gas in the envelope of the airship itself, so that if it leaked, people would smell it. And the big advantage of this was that it meant there was no garlic bread on the menu. But no matter what precautions were taken, airships were an accident waiting to happen, and happen it did near New York. A spark set fire to the largest balloon of hydrogen ever filled, and newsreels captured the event. Amazingly, 62 of the Hindenburg's 97 passengers survived. Airships didn't. May the 6th, 1937, marks the end of the airship era. Aeroplanes alone would now own the sky. Aeroplanes like the de Havilland Dragon Rapide. Now, this 1930s aeroplane may have been made out of fabric and wood, but the concept behind it was cutting edge. If you want to know where the romantic mini break to Paris began, or the stag weekend in Amsterdam, well, it was in this. Scheduled, dependable, and made in their hundreds, the Rapide really was the easy jet of the day. Except travelling in it wasn't actually that easy, and there are no jets.
Take a while. Just get a couple of moments while we warm the engines up.
Seems to me a lot of people must have got into one of these, having never been in an aeroplane before, and been absolutely terrified. You can see the metal tubes, few bits of perspex. That's how it's built. That's the technology of the First World War. We're right at the nub end of it. And they must have thought, aeroplane? It was more like a caravan. And we're off.
The Dragon Rapide ushered in popular air travel, but it was strictly short haul. Yes, this aeroplane took Britons to all corners of the UK, and even right across the Channel to France. But the shopping trip to New York was still some way off.
It is fantastically noisy. No pressurisation, could be freezing cold, could be very choppy, you could be very sick. There's no food, there's no film, there's no drinks, there's no flatbed sleeping arrangements, but it is a real flying experience. It's a vibrating, living aeroplane. You can sense the rush of air over the wings rewarding us with this new and novel gift of flight. This is a traditional landing on the grass as it would have been back in the 1930s. Very few people who go on one of those realise that it started on something like this. And it wasn't that long ago. There's only 35 years between them.
Written into the DNA of today's 747 is the long-distance ambition of the Vimy and the market appeal of the Dragon Rapide. Now the 747 carries thousands of duty-free items and their owners across the Atlantic every single day. It's been so successful that transatlantic travel is starting to seem, well, something of a chore. At the beginning of the 20th century, long-distance travel was for the conscripted, the uprooted and the seriously rich. But these three aeroplanes changed all that forever. The people who flew in that one were worried that they might not make it. The people who flew in that one were worried that they might not make it without being sick or being diverted to another airfield. And the people who fly in that one are worried that they won't be showing the latest James Bond film. The aeroplane means that nowhere in the world need be more than a day away. It truly has crushed continents. But what about a more immediate concern? Crossing counties.